The weight was not metaphorical. It was a physical presence, a leaden cloak pinning him to the mattress in the gray Chartwell dawn. Winston Churchill stared at the canopy above his bed, a prisoner in his own body. This was the black dog, his ancient, familiar tormentor. It did not bark, it settled, a suffocating silence of despair that rendered the will to move, to think, to be, utterly inert. Outside, England awaited its leader, but in this room the Prime Minister was conquered. The pattern was as predictable as it was cruel. Days, sometimes weeks of this paralyzing gloom, where letters piled up unread and the world narrowed to the four walls of his bedroom. Then the inevitable violent swing, a surge of manic energy that would propel him for months, driving war plans with ferocious intensity, his mind a furnace of strategy and rhetoric. The public saw only the bulldog, the indomitable spirit. They never saw the hollowed-out man in the aftermath, the cost of that fire. A memory, sharp and incongruous, pierced the gray fog, not of Parliament or the war rooms, but of mortar and Kentish clay. His own hands, caked in dust, placing brick upon brick at the estate's wall. The recollection was visceral, the coarse texture of the brick, the satisfying thump of the trowel smoothing the bed joint, the precise, measurable progress of a rising line. In that memory, for an hour, the dog had loosened its jaws. There had been no grand thoughts, only the next brick, the next level. The despair had been held at bay by simple, rhythmic action, a flicker then in the stagnant pool of his mind. A connection, frail but undeniable, he tracked back through the ledger of his dark days. On the occasions when the abyss had seemed slightly less bottomless, when a sliver of light had penetrated, what had he done? He had, almost without exception, gone to the brickyard. He had done something. The activity itself, mindless and physical, had been a rope thrown into the pit. He had not climbed out, but he had stopped falling. The clarity of this realization was itself a minor rebellion against the gloom. It was not a strategy, not yet. It was merely an observation, a single, hard datum in the soft chaos of his suffering. On days he laid bricks, the black dog's bite was ever so slightly less deep. The observation demanded application. In a leather-bound journal, normally reserved for state memos, Churchill began a new log. Columns were drawn: date, prevailing humor, activities, effect. The act of inking the headings was itself a defiance. He would treat this internal war with the same empirical rigor he applied to battlefield reports. His primary weapon, his tested intervention, was bricklaying. He codified a rule. When the first cold tendrils of despair coiled around his morning thoughts, he would not reason with them. He would walk, however leaden his limbs, to the brickyard. The routine was monastic. Dressed in old tweeds, he would stand before the pile of bricks, the mound of sand, the heap of lime. The initial movements were agony, a protest of a mind screaming for the stillness of bed. But he would lift the first brick, its rough solidity a shock to his numb senses. He would mix the mortar, the rhythmic scraping of the hoe a primal beat. Then the placement: brick, mortar, tap, check. Brick, mortar, tap, check. A perfect, repeating cadence. His journal entries for these sessions began to show a pattern. Humor, black, forenoon at wall by orchard. After 1 hour, a lessening of pressure. Mind turned from circular dread to line and level. The work required no introspection, only presence. It anchored him in the tangible world, grain, weight, alignment, crowding out the formless terror. The strategy faced its ultimate test before a critical war cabinet meeting in May 1941. Dawn found him besieged, visions of naval disasters and invasion maps swirling into a vortex of futility. The black dog growled, urging surrender to the sheets. Instead, his hand reached for the journal. He recorded the bleak humor, then forced his body upright and outside. At the brickyard, under a steel-gray sky, he attacked the wall with a quiet fury. Sweat beaded on his brow, mixing with the mortar dust. For 90 minutes he built, his entire universe the next brick and the trueness of the course. The chaotic fears were silenced by the physical mantra. As he cleaned his trowel, a remarkable clarity descended. The strategic problems remained, but they were now objects to be arranged and solved, not monsters in the dark. He arrived at the cabinet room clean and composed. The weight was gone, replaced by a formidable, focused resolve. As he listened to the reports, his mind, scoured clean by the morning's rhythm, analyzed with piercing sharpness. He saw connections others missed, proposed actions with decisive certainty. The ministers saw only the expected Churchillian vigor. None could know it was a vigor meticulously reclaimed, brick by brick, from the abyss that morning. He had not just prepared for the meeting, he had engineered the state of mind to lead it. The wall at Chartwell stood a few courses higher, and the Prime Minister stood firm.